Happy New Year.
Dude, I'm just... Woo. Imran, he's still recovering from New Year's.
It's long, Noro. Hey, what's up, potty people? What's up, Sameem, Shabnam? How you doing? Happy New Year, guys.
You tell us,
Happy
man,
New
potty
Year.
people. I heard you had an 8-day party.
It was 8 days, 7 days. I met a girl on Monday, took her for a drink on Tuesday. Never mind.
Tuesday.
Anyway, I had a good New Year. Saw friends and family in the Bay Area. Saw family in Fremont as well that we went to on the wedding. So hung out with them. Their birthdays are coming out. The two cousin nephews. They're mid-January. So since I was here, I got them some gifts. One of them got a Lilo and Stitch soccer ball, and the other one got something expensive. So that is all.
Nice.
Wait, what do you mean? What's expensive?
Something more expensive than a soccer ball.
He got throat surgery?
I don't know. I stuck some halls in my mouth, but it's still like just this weird persistent cough. I hate it. I hate it a lot.
No matter how many inferences
Things
you
you
do,
stick in your mouth?
Otis ain't gonna show up for you.
Otis, my boy.
Oh, man.
That's my guy.
Yeah, I went to Huma's for New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah?
And Sameem showed up too.
Why is he showing up
Yeah.
everywhere?
And
Hey, man, 2025, new Sameem, no more flaking. I'm out and about.
You went to Vancouver.
Yeah, nice.
It was fun.
You're out at Haldi Humas.
Yeah, I was in Vancouver.
For New Year's.
Haldi Humas.
Yeah.
I almost got kicked out of the San Diego Clippers game the night before because I was yelling too much, and I yelled at a guy on the other team, and he gave me the bird from the bench.
damn.
Wow.
But Haldi Huma, well, I told the story when we were there, but Huma can party, man. She knows how to stay up till midnight. I was pretty surprised. I thought she was going to be out by 11.
It reminded me of my cousin's wedding on the way there at the airport. Guess who we saw at the airport? Slumming with us passengers. Regular folks.
A basketball player?
Yes,
Who's
Shabnam, a basketball player.
Who's on the Clippers?
No. Speaking of
Chris
ball,
Paul? Chris Paul? Blake?
He's in the G League.
Blake Griffin. Yeah, Blake Griffin.
He was, as of this time, he was in the G League during that time frame where I saw him.
Bronny.
Boom. Saw Bronny Jr.
Wow.
Bronny Jr., LeBron's son, was at the airport. And then once I saw him, I saw a bunch of other tall dudes come in. So we had to do our research and find out. He was on the same flight to Orlando, but of like the 10 players, he was one of 2 people that was sitting in first class. The rest of them were all in economy class for that flight. I did not say hi to him. I didn't fist bump him or anything like that. And we found out later that there was an NBA showcase in Orlando that week.
Yeah.
So he was being showcased, obviously. And once he did well, I think he scored like 30 points. And then he got called up to the Lakers the day before Christmas. So congrats to him. But we got to see Bronny Jr. on the airplane.
He's the Steve Bannerjee of the G League, I guess, being all flashy and shit.
Oh, he did have a
He's
flashy
like,
backpack.
you guys just
His
better
backpack
know.
was super flashy.
Yeah,
Well,
he's like, you guys better know, like, I'm gonna sit up here, get your ass back there.
He can't sit in coach though. I mean, even like security and stuff. Like I would imagine, even first class. Is
I don't. He did not. He
you
there was,
know,
I'm not. He didn't really have security. He had a trainer with him, but not security. And maybe we don't say that he doesn't have security, but
yeah, because all those NBA kidnappers, that's our core audience.
look,
They're like, oh shit, we can kidnap Bronny now. Which I After Dark said he doesn't.
maybe
have
this
security.
stays.
Imagine all the like Desi and non-Desi like listeners, like our housewives and our like 5 friends that are listening, and they're gonna do a heist to like rob LeBron James' son now.
Our one listener.
Like these, like
Can you imagine
our like 5'5" listener?
Haldi
Yeah,
Huma
like-
with hammer Huma breaks into Bronny James's house, huffing and puffing Huma with her hammer.
Yeah, and she's like 5'5", and LeBron James' son's like 6'5", and she's like trying to intimidate him with the hammer.
I could see it, man. I could see it.
Huma's
Anyways,
intimidating. No, I'm just kidding.
She is. Hey, speaking of intimidation, this episode that we're about to review gets pretty wild.
It does. It does.
There's a lot of intimidation.
A lot of intimidation, a lot of power struggles.
Should we get into it?
Tell me, feed us the story.
Jai, After Dark, episode 5. Take it away, Shabnam.
Yeah, so we
Too bad that club doesn't exist. Imran would have an instant hosting job every week.
I would be the Adam Ray guy, right? I'd be like grabbing the microphones, like, ladies and gentlemen, it is the sexy Samim.
Hi, I'm getting there. Body's not quite there yet, but Otis, I'm coming for you. Replacing.
Yikes. You're what
Brown
for
don't
him?
crack.
So we open with Steve in New York getting his suit altered, and the tailor is working on his sleeves, and he has the tailor make his suit sleeves extra short so his expensive Rolex shows. And this is what I'm talking about. This is like the worst of desi classes culture with like the craziest American stripper culture that's like colliding. It's wild.
Yeah.
So he goes to the New York Chippendales Club with his hella short suit sleeves, and there's a line of 386 people on standby outside the club, and there's already a full club of 500 people inside. So Steve's like over the moon about this. When he gets inside, Denise greets him and shows him the VIP section. He loves the idea of a VIP section and like leather chairs he can sit on. And of course, anything that separates the rich from the peons is Steve's thing. You know?
Yeah. I love famous people.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's like, yeah, it's so true.
Who was the guy that was famous there? Tommy Toon?
Tommy Toons. Yeah. Tommy Toons was there, Broadway star, and then Steve is like, I love famous people. Anything with famous people, I'm really excited.
And he doesn't even know who they are.
And he's like yelling it in the club. Yeah. He doesn't know who they are. And then he asks Denise to introduce him to more famous people. And that's why he yells, I love famous people.
He's such a tool. So we see that Nick is backstage. He refuses to come out because he's so nervous about the number they're about to do. Mm-hmm. And even more so because Denise and Bradford tell him that Steve's out there. And Denise and Bradford are like, you should enjoy the fruits of your labor. But he like refuses to join. He stays backstage, does a bump of cocaine, and blasts classical music into his headphones. And in the main area of the club, the show starts, and it's the Dr. Hunkenstein routine. And Steve looks on, and he's like really enjoying himself. He loves it. Like, this is where, you know, Samim, you brought it up. You're like, it's kind of a stupid idea. And it is a stupid idea, but if it's done well and the guys are good looking, like, it'll be fine, you know? But it's a really stupid idea.
I mean, Hunkenstein was pretty good looking. I understand he had some makeup on, and I don't know if those abs were real, but hey, everyone, if you have some alone time, you know, go play that scene and tell us what you think about Hunkenstein and if it was a good idea.
Make sure you tell Samim.
Yeah.
At Jai After Dark.
Send us an email at jaiafterdark.
Attention, Samim and apps.
Yeah. Make the subject line Dr. Hunkenstein, and those will be forwarded directly to me.
Yeah. So after the show, Steve goes backstage to congratulate Nick, and Nick is happy but tells Steve that, you know, that was the routine you nixed in LA. And Steve says, but you didn't have the really good looking guy, right? And then Nick says, actually, I did, the exact same guy.
Yeah.
And
Steve
says,
agrees with me.
Yeah, exactly. Steve's like, that guy was hot. And Steve's like, well, congratulations. And like, he can't even suck it up, be like, yeah, I was kind of an asshole. Like, he can't even say like anything.
Well, he literally was like, you didn't show me this because it wasn't the same exact guy. And Nick was like, let me tell you something. It was the same guy. Like,
yeah,
it was that you saw in LA that you said no to, the one you nixed.
Yeah. So then as Steve leaves, Nick is outside for a smoke break, and Steve is like touching the snow and he's super fascinated. And Nick asks like, what, have you never seen snow before? And he says, I've only ever been to Bombay and LA. And Nick, which is kind of surprising to me. I'm like, if you're this rich, you never went anywhere? Like, I don't know. He's like,
I know rich Desi's done don't go anywhere. Are you kidding? They sit in San Jose with their 20 mil and they don't go anywhere other than India or Pakistan. I know plenty of people like that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he doesn't have an imagination. That's kind of what we touched on the last episode last week. Like, he just wants to be rich and famous. Like, he doesn't really know what that means. You know, like that's why they always say like this fake sort of, what do they call it? Like faux couture, like ghetto rich, like those kind of
Yeah.
terms. Like they don't know how to be secure. So that's why he's just like so into like the restaurants. Like he doesn't think like he can go have experiences, because who's gonna know if he travels somewhere? It has to be like
Yeah.
opulence in front of
Oh,
people.
so he would have
Like
thrived
that's
Yeah.
in the
the kind of,
Instagram era then.
yeah, exactly. And that was gonna be, if there was internet, this guy would be all over the world taking
Yeah.
pictures and being like, look where I am. But the opulence is here and now. So the
Yeah.
Rolex, the short sleeves, the house, like, yeah, the
But
VIP.
like I can't help but compare him to my dad a little bit, just because they're like around the same age, came at the same time to this country, right? But my dad liked to meet people and go places and do things and see stuff, and like,
Well, yeah,
I
he
don't
was
know.
a
It's
jolly old man. He was Santa Claus.
but
Stop
like I'm
using
just
quotes.
like oh my god.
Sorry.
Oh man.
Sorry, Uncle. That's, may I not go to hell.
I don't think he'll be listening to the podcast, but
Yeah, if he did hear it, he'd forget in a few minutes, so it's fine.
Oh my
But
god.
but anyways, I'm just saying, like, it's weird to me, but you're right, you already explained it well. He's just like a flawed person, but anyway. So as Steve leaves,
He's touching the
so
snow.
yeah, he's touching the snow. So Nick makes a snowball and he throws it at Steve. And then Steve says, "What was that?" And Nick tells him, "It's a snowball. It's fun." And then Nick shows Steve like how to make a snowball, right? And
So
then
cute.
yeah, it's so cute. But there's like these weird immigrant stories like this of tea bags. Like I heard this one friend of ours, they said when their dad came, their dad didn't know what a tea bag was. He hadn't seen a tea bag in the early 70s. I know why you're laughing. Just let it go.
y'all.
So
Her dad came, didn't know what the tea bags were. Got it. Keep going.
yeah, so he ripped open the tea bag and put the loose leaves into his tea. So then someone came over and was like, no, you can just dip the tea bag into the tea and it works. So he's like, okay, cool. So then when he wanted the sugar, he just dipped the sugar packet into the
Come
into
on,
the
no
tea.
way. There's no way that's a true story.
It was told to me as if it was true. Like, I don't know, I wasn't there.
I mean, maybe I could see that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So this
Which is
type of
also true because
innocence
now you
is
have those
there.
stirring
This type of
sticks.
innocence is there.
Yeah. Of course. Like
Yeah.
these Desi uncles came here super emotionally repressed, right? Of course he didn't know what snowfall was, and he didn't know,
And
he couldn't
also,
enjoy it, right? Like,
yeah, and also there's no internet and stuff like that back then.
yeah.
It's like what you saw in your life is what you knew. So anyways, so then like, he learns how to make snowballs, whatever, and they kind of start getting in this snowball fight, but obviously Nick is way better and Nick starts like clobbering him at snowballs, which Nick is kind of being like a little bit of a dick
Of
too.
course. Yeah.
But, yeah. And so then Steve yells, "I don't want to play anymore." And then
I don't want
and
to
he
play. The key word being play. And he's like,
yeah.
no. And he's like almost crying. Like, stop hitting
Yeah.
me with snowballs.
Traumatic. It's something traumatic in his youth. He went back to his youthful days.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Have
And
you guys
then
seen The Office when Dwight and Jim had that snowball fight? It's in the
I
later
haven't.
episodes. I think it's after Michael leaves, Michael Scott. Jim and Dwight have a snowball fight in the office, and it's the same shit. Dwight has like 100 snowballs that he hides everywhere in the office, and everywhere Jim shows up, he starts hammering him with snowballs, and Jim is literally like, I don't want to play anymore. So it's the same, almost like the same exact scene. But yeah, I wish I lived in a place with snowballs.
And so we see a transformation of more villain era.
And tea bags?
And tea bags. Imran.
Oh man.
Now we see more of the villain era Steve also, because you see he's trying to make amends, right? Right before this scene, he says congratulations to Nick. He's like, you did it. I
Yeah.
know, like, he didn't say I made a mistake. He just said, oh, okay, well, congratulations though. Like, he's still saying good job. So he's trying to make amends, and then Nick just kind of shoves it back into his face. And so, okay, cool. There's another villain growth phase right there. And then the snowball fight. All right, let me just be vulnerable and be a child here, but you go too far and be a bully. And then another point for the villain era Steve to come fruition. I was like, okay, we're seeing more of this popping off.
Yeah, because the scene ends with basically he pushes Nick to stop, and then he says, "You're a bully." And then Nick says, "Are you serious?" And then Steve like flexes his boss muscles and is like, "I want the report tomorrow," or whatever, like some report.
So dumb.
And it's just like you can see that he's okay trying a little bit as long as nobody makes him take accountability. Like if Nick was just like, "Oh, thanks for saying the Dr. Hunkenstein routine was good," and didn't even say anything about him nixing it in LA, he would have been fine with that. He doesn't want to be held accountable. If the people can just move forward and accept his sorry and sweep things under the rug, he'd be fine with that, which that is a total Desi thing. We love to sweep shit under the rug.
He couldn't do it though. He carried on everything, and this episode gets more intense. We also talked about it last week. Like he gets so like in relation against Nick. It's just such an ego battle between these two. But this Imran, you're totally right about this snowball scene. But I took it kind of the other way, where Nick was extending an olive branch, so to speak, because he is like, "Let me show you what a snowball is." And when he's tagging him with the snowballs, it wasn't anything crazy. It was so light and innocent. And Showman was just like, "No, I can't handle
Yeah.
it." Like it wasn't anything crazy.
Oh yeah, I was
Yeah.
watching that being like, oh, they're actually there's a breakthrough in this friendship.
Yeah,
They're
they're gonna
actually
bond.
going to be
Yeah.
friends, and
Mhm.
they're actually going to be chill and cool together and work together. They're finally going to collaborate versus competing, and they'll see the value. No, these are all wishful thinking. Obviously, you wouldn't have a 10-episode drama over it, but yeah, I did initially think that as well, and then it got more intense. I'm like, okay, they set us up.
Daisies can't have fun.
Yeah,
NFD.
well, like
No fun, Daisy.
well, yeah, but I feel like you kind of see their just egos collide. Like Nick's okay forgiving Steve if Steve just lets him shit on Steve a little bit. You know, that's what Nick wants. Nick wants a little bit to be the boss. And Steve, like the moment you shit on him a little bit, he's going to shit on you 10 times more. And so, I don't know. Anyways, I don't know. Maybe we can cut that out. I said shit a lot. So
We can take a break if you need to go shit.
I'm good.
Shitting is on your mind.
So Steve goes back to LA, back home to his huge mansion, where Irene greets him pregnant with their child.
Got
She
her.
asks him, yeah, locked her down. She asks him about the club. He says everything about it was bigger and better than LA. And he says it kind of like he's slightly disappointed. And she's like, "That's fantastic." But she notices his mood and she's like, "Stevie," which this bugs me. I don't like that she like it's not even his fucking real name, but whatever. So then she's like, "Stevie, you can't be jealous of your own club." And she's like, "The better it does, the better we do." And he says, I know, but you can tell he's like not really enthusiastic. And this is where it's like he's putting like his ego and importance over the business. You know? It's like crazy.
Well, yeah, and then right then he gets sued. He gets what do they call it? A process server. So he's like, "Hey,
Yeah.
are you Steve Bannerjee?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then he's like, "Great to meet you," and hands him a summons. He's getting sued by, I'm assuming it's those brown guys that you had referred to earlier episode where they couldn't get into Chippendales. He's getting sued for racial discrimination against people coming into the club, and I'm like, wow, that was fast.
I think
Yeah.
because remember Otis was walking out of the club seeing this, so I think it may have been maybe Otis and those guys, or
Yeah.
Otis.
Totally. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good on Otis. Good for Otis. So you're right. So he gets served with this discrimination, and then he goes inside, and Irene and him take a look at it, and she tells him that they're being sued for racial discriminatory practices regarding the VIP membership. And doesn't it give you the sense like he still can't read and understand English that well? Like that's the vibe you get where it feels like she has to explain shit to him. Like he can't
there's
just
no
read it himself.
concept of suing for discrimination in the subcontinent. There's literally an entire caste system built around it. So like I think he probably can't even like wrap his mind around, oh yeah, of course I know what the brown people
Which
like.
I was
Like,
wondering
that's
last episode.
human nature for him.
I was wondering about that last episode where they go to the country club the Palisades restaurant, whatever it was. But it's like, well, why don't you sue them? If you're getting sued now, why can't you sue the country club if you're able to prove it also?
He doesn't want to be a victim. He wants to be the the power broker.
Yeah.
He's the one that's why it's a direct cut from him getting rejected from that restaurant to getting sued for the VIP cards. And then Irene was like, "What are you even talking about? What are these VIP cards?" And then he just says, "I don't know." He like tries to play it off
Yeah.
that he doesn't know anything about them.
He said, "How could you ask me that? It's not
Yeah.
true." And it's like, dude, you are a fucking pathological liar. And she's like, "Oh, it's probably a money grab. This is what happens when you're successful. Everybody wants a piece." She's like going along with him, and he's totally gaslighting her. But I mean, Desi people don't sue people. He's just like, "I'll just be racist better." That's the
He's like, "This is
solution.
a great idea."
Yeah.
I'll tell you about a lawsuit. There was a lawsuit.
Oh, tell me.
Desi on Desi crime. I'm not sure if I can talk about it. I'm kidding. It's like 20 years ago. But we had the Pakistan Independence Day Festival at USC. We were making it legitimate. We had it very organized. And one of the food restaurants there decided they didn't want to pay us afterwards, like post the festival. And so we did have to take them up on it and sue them. We brought in a lawyer who we met through the festival itself and tried to sue them. We did an arbitration. Is it arbitration? We actually met with them. They did not want to pay no matter what, even though they made money off it. It's like, no, we're not going to pay that $500 or $1,000 for that food booth. No. So once they got into the lawyer's office, then they had to take it seriously at that point. They were not taking it seriously before that. So certain people need to be sued in order to take things seriously, especially on payment. And so we did get our money after that arbitration. Like we just wanted the proper amount. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Because we had to pay everything else on campus. So that's my story on Desi lawsuits.
That's crazy that you'd have to get that deep over a fair/festival.
Yeah, it took a quarter after the festival. And so then we had to go down the route of getting the lawyer.
So then, after talking to Irene, Steve goes to discuss with the bouncer, and he tries to feed the bouncer Carl the story about the cards, because the bouncer Carl's been keeping people out and using these cards to like discriminate against people. So basically, then Steve tells Carl, just say that the cards were fake and customers made these cards because they're so desperate to get into our club because it's so great. And then Carl goes, don't you think your bouncer would recognize a fake card? You need to come up with a better story. And Steve says, just, there's no cards. And he runs away.
Of course. He's just like, fuck this shit. There's no
the
cards.
amount of yelling, and there's more yelling to be had, but it's just so annoying.
Yeah.
It's just like, God damn it.
There's something even more annoying about an older Desi man yelling in a Desi accent. It's really triggering for me.
I don't know why. I have no clue.
And he has an
I have
accent.
No clue
it's
either.
not like, but it's not a very typical Pakistani accent, I would say. Right?
I mean, he's a Pakistani guy that basically grew up in the U.S. playing an Indian accent from the 70s. So it's probably not well recorded what that would have sounded like, but I don't think it's that bad. Okay, so a bit of a tangent here. When he walks back into his house, Shabnam, you mentioned that Irene was pregnant. Steve's son, his own son, Christian, started his own mail review, Chippendales, in 2020, even though the family has no more connection to Chippendales. So I'm assuming the son didn't get left with a whole lot of money because he works and worked as a male stripper.
Oh, so
because he's young, like
he is a stripper. He's not creating Chippendales.
I don't know if he's a stripper today, but he founded his own mail review, Chippendales, in 2020.
And was he a stripper, or was he just trying to
do... He was a stripper before he started this. So I think like the pregnant scene that Hulu shows right now, that might be his older child. But then I went a little bit deeper. He actually had 3 kids. Apparently, he already had a kid before he married Irene, but he never told Irene or his 2 other kids about his first kid. So that kid has done some interviews.
Do we know from who? Was she Desi? Was she white?
No, I don't have any context there, so we can maybe.
Dude, she's probably white. You think Steve's trying to have sex with another Desi woman? He's like
Or
all
unless
about
it's
that
somebody
white
from
Yeah,
India.
privilege.
unless it was
Yeah.
Interesting.
So who knows? Yeah, but these kids were born in the 80s, right? So they're still pretty young.
Yeah. Interesting. You guys should find that. Are they in Southern California? You guys should make friends with them. Dude, can we have that stripper guy on the podcast?
I would be
Chippendales?
so down.
Dude, didn't you make that joke when we started this? We need to have a male stripper on at the end of this series.
See? My ideas come to fruition naturally.
Yeah, okay, so we need to find that guy. Let's find him on social media.
I already found him. I was on his Instagram this morning looking at him.
So then we see Denise and Nick strolling through Midtown Manhattan. And she says, "We're just a power couple strolling through Midtown." And he says, "We're a couple? And tell me more." And she says, "Yeah, we've been for years. We have love and companionship, and we can still fuck whoever we want." And he laughs and says, "Now that's a great relationship."
She's into him.
Yeah, so we start to see that she's kind of she's kind of into him. And then they go to an office.
The gay guy.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's already been with the girl,
maybe
so he probably doesn't want to go.
I can change him.
But he's literally already been married to a woman, and he's like, "I'm not going down that again." I was going to say road, hole, I don't know which one. So anyways. So
What? What hole?
Hey, we talked about this last week. Like, the positions are a little. Nick is a pretty bendy guy, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
From the research I'm doing by watching the show.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways.
No, that's a great name for Chippendales' competitor. Protect your holes.
So let's see. So they end up going to, so Nick and Denise end up going into this fancy office building where they meet Bradford. And Nick and Bradford passionately kiss hello. And you can tell Denise is kind of getting like jealous and uncomfortable. She's feeling like a third wheel. And then Nick says, "Welcome to our new office." And Nick and Bradford convince her to like it. She's like not really into it. And she's kind of like, meh, whatever. And then she gets a call from the Phil Donahue show asking for Chippendales people to be on the Phil Donahue show. And of course, Steve gets this news. He's like super excited about this whole thing too. And it's in New York. So Nick and Bradford and Denise, they end up going. They're backstage while the dancers are doing their okay for TV dance. And Nick and Bradford are kissing, and Denise, again, she's totally feeling like a third wheel. And after the guys perform, Nick goes out for an interview segment with Phil Donahue. And Donahue introduces Nick as the mastermind behind the idea, Mr. Chippendales. And Phil talks about Nick's accolades, his Emmys, his work as a dancer and a choreographer. And then we go back to LA and we see that Steve and Irene are watching the show on TV. And Irene says to Steve, "It's your creation on TV." And Steve is like filled with pride. But in the next scene, you see that he's like venting to Irene about Nick allowing Donahue to call him Mr. Chippendales and the mastermind and all that. And he's saying like Nick should have corrected Donahue. And he wants to go to New York and find Nick and like chew him out for this. And then we see Irene like kid gloving him and like emotionally managing the shit out of him. This really annoyed the crap out of me, where she grabs his face and she's like, "Look at me and repeat after me." And she has him repeat all this stuff about how he has a great life and his business is booming and he wears a Rolex and he lives in a big, beautiful house with a gorgeous pregnant wife, and he's not going to blow it over some silly little slight. And I'm like, oh my God, kill me.
She kind of has to do that to him.
She has to do it. Yeah, I agree.
The dude's been.
I know she has to do it, but like,
so you have to like start from the beginning as a toddler. Like, let's retrain this dude. Like, I'm about to have his kid, so I don't blame her for doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't blame her. I just feel sorry for her that she has to do that. Like, that's what it takes to like keep him in line, you know?
She even like somewhat rolls her eyes, right?
And for our one listener,
she like somewhat rolls her eyes when he walks away. Like, she even knows that she's she's doing exactly what we're saying. Like she even thinks
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. Like
We're
because
two
Yeah.
grown ass adults. Why am I babying my husband like this?
totally.
Yeah.
And for our
And so
for our one listener, Phil Donahue, long-running American talk show host and host of the Donahue
Yeah.
Show, daytime talk show. So if you were ever sick during the day, early afternoon, you would see his show on, similar to Oprah show, and there were several others that we'll see in this episode, and Shubnam will probably mention. But that was a long-running theme for this half of the show.
And you would have seen strippers on TV if you were home alone in the 80s.
In the middle of the day.
In the middle of the day, dancing on Phil Donahue. And they show the dancers, and it's just like mad hilarious watching these guys like Chippendale it up on a broadcast television show.
Yeah. I think they had more than a G-string. It was like a proper underwear, I think.
Yeah, of course,
and, yeah.
But still, horny women in the audience, and Phil Donahue's loving it.
Yeah, and housewives at home with their husbands at work, they gotta, feed their needs somehow, I guess. So, so after the therapy session, I'm a poet, okay? No, anyway, so after the therapy session that Irene had to provide to freaking Steve, she clearly has like a headache. So she goes to Steve, like, do we have aspirin? And she starts looking around. She looks in Steve's desk, and she ends up finding a stack of the gold membership cards. And she is pissed, and she confronts him about it. She says, I don't know what's worse, the fact that you did it or the fact that you lied about it. And she throws the cards at him. And he tries to make excuses, and he's like, when other people see black people in here, they think it's not classy. It's not my fault people are racist. I just want my club to be successful. And Irene is like, there's two kinds of people, good people and bad people. We are good people. And he says, I'm sorry. And she says, about what? And he says, that I didn't tell you. And she says, and he says, that I tried to keep black people out of the club. And then she says, now I need to go find us an expensive lawyer. And she like walks away.
That's hilarious. I shouldn't have kicked black people out of the club. I'm sorry, wife. Like, just
Yeah.
such a fucking racist ass fool.
Back to toddler era Steve.
Seriously.
And,
definitely a hide the silverware moment. Like, this guy's such a racist.
Yeah, he's such a like clout chasing, money grubbing, just classist piece of poo.
Which I wonder,
I
at this point is, what was his struggle? What was his real reason for leaving India? If they were in a middle class India, they were doing fine, printing press business is good, everything is fine, and they have a house there as well. What was the underlying purpose for what he's doing to be money grubbing and just seeking fame and fortune, essentially?
But I think you're answering your own question.
Fame and fortune, that's what he wanted.
I
want to know what triggered it in India, like to be like,
sure,
oh, I need to go to America because I want fame and fortune.
It's just a mindset sometimes. Like in India, like when we talked about the Ambani wedding a few months ago, those families already existed. A lot of the oligarchy of India was already set. So when he came here, he obviously had major ambitions, like by saving 90% of his salary for 7 years working as a gas station attendant. So I would assume his motivation was what he told his mom. He wants to be rich and fancy. And sometimes that's enough for people. Like there's no underlying thoughts behind it. It's just, I'm rich, I drive my Range Rover, and some people don't, so I'm better than them. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a backwards way of looking at the world.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe there is something slightly deeper, like who knows what caste he's from? Who knows like if he was bullied? Like we don't know the real Steve, if he was kind of like ugly or short or fat, or like who knows, he might have been bullied for something in his life, and then he just decided like he needs to be in control and the kingpin in order to feel secure throughout his life. Because the only person he kind of cowers to is Irene. And I think it's because he just actually loves her,
Got that white goddess, dude. You can't ruin that.
Yeah, and maybe he also feels like she contributes to his image as kind of like legitimate, or like, gets him into more of like kind of like white privilege-y thing. He kind of sees her as a way of doing that because they're married. So like, I don't know if that plays into it, but definitely I do think that it seems from the series that he does love her. So anyways, okay. Then Ray comes in right after jabbering about some repair he's making, and Steve like snaps at him to get to the point because he's all like frazzled after the argument with Irene. And then Ray tells Steve that Nick was on the Mike Douglas show, so another daytime show, and he called himself Mr. Chippendales again. So this is like just enough to put Steve over the edge to call Nick and totally chew him out. And like, of course, like Nick downplays the fact and pretends like he got no like joy from it when, like Nick was probably loving every minute of attention too. And Steve reminds Nick that Nick is Steve's employee. And Nick says, "Here we go again with the employee bullshit. If it wasn't for me, you'd be a failed nightclub owner living inside of a car." And then Steve says, "If it wasn't for me, you'd be doing unicorn tales. By the way, I watched that show and it's very low quality." And then Nick says, "Oh yeah, who has the Emmys?" And Steve says, "Where did you get the Emmy? At a souvenir shop in Hollywood?" And then and then Steve ends up yelling at Nick that he's taking credit for Steve's creation, and they hang up. And then Steve turns to Ray and says, "He was not apologetic at all." And then and then Nick says to Bradford, "He's an asshole." And Bradford basically tells like Nick to shake it off, and they start making out. And yeah,
He was not apologetic at all. I like it's so funny. Like it's just all he wants is like submission. That's all he
yeah,
wants, and he's not going to
yeah,
get it from Nick unless
yeah,
like I don't know how he would get from Nick, but he's not going to get
Sounds
it.
very
yeah,
Elon like.
yeah. But I'm like thinking, I feel like, is Ray just a complete tool, or is Ray being kind of manipulative? Like, why does he keep putting gasoline on the fire that is Steve by being like, he was also on this show, like, I don't know. Ray's kind
He's
of a
the king,
bitch.
right? Because
Yeah,
Ray is a bitch. Like, but
yeah,
he's Steven's bitch because he
yeah,
literally kissed his hand in the last episode and got down on his knees at the end scene. So
yeah,
yeah, he's his bitch and he'll do anything for him.
yeah. So basically, the end of the conversation with Nick and Steve is basically Nick's like, "Oh, you want to see me showing off? I'll show you showing off." And then Nick basically ends up rubbing it in Steve's face even more by going on this huge press tour where he talks about Chippendales, and he like is,
Yeah.
Mr. Chippendales. So then we see Ray egging Steve on more, and he's like, "That should be you. You cannot let him do that. You have to fight fire with fire." And so Steve says, "What do you mean?" And then Ray says, "You should go on shows too." So, okay. And this is such a fucking bad idea. This is where I'm like, you got to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Like, you are a business person that saves money. You're not the poster child for male stripping,
Oh,
like,
we're
I
about
don't
to
know.
find out.
Yeah.
Like so then
So,
they show all the super cuts of Nick like just killing it, right? Like he's
yeah.
really, really engaging in the interviews. He not only goes on Phil Donahue and Mike Rogers, he ends up on Sally Jesse
Mike
Raphael.
Douglas, Mike Rogers. Who's Mike Rogers?
Mike Douglas, Mike Rogers, Michael Douglas. Shout out Catherine Zeta-Jones. He goes on Sarah Jessica Parker.
Sally
No,
Jesse
just kidding.
Raphael. This guy.
No, so he goes
Yeah.
on Sally Jesse Raphael, and like I don't know who the actress is that they have her playing, but it's just like it doesn't look
Does
like her
not
at
work
all. It looks
at
like a
all.
Halloween
Yeah.
costume. It's like a 19-year-old dressed up like a 60-year-old. Like it's just so
Yeah.
funny when they show him Nick and Sally Jesse Raphael, but he's killing it on these interviews.
Yeah.
Then they show the contrast with Steven, right? I shoved him.
Yeah. Yeah, with Steve, and he goes on this local news channel,
LA.
which is
Yeah.
also, like, obviously not
LA.
gonna be as yeah, it's obviously not gonna be as cool as, like, doing, like, a daytime show, and it's, like, this 5-minute little segment, and then he basically fumbles and bumbles his way through it, like, "This is like a stripping for women as opposed to usually there's stripping for men and women take their clothes off, but now the men are taking their clothes off," and it's like, "What the hell are you saying? This is, like, not interesting."
He says typically women take clothes off for men, and then men subsequently put money in their panties. So in this situation, it's reversed. The women are, putting the money in the men panties. I was like, dude, is this a real? Is this verbatim? Like, because I want to
Yeah.
find that episode, or sorry, I want to find that interview if this is an actual verbatim interview that they're using.
Yeah. And also, like, his makeup looked terrible. He looked
Oh my
like a
god!
Dracula or
Oh my god! I
something.
was waiting for
Yeah,
Daisy
that moment.
Dracula.
Somebody
seems like they
to
did that
bring
on
it up.
purpose, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they had to. He looked like literally looked like Giga Chad. If people know that meme or whatever, look it up. The Chad version of that jawline and the makeup over caking of the makeup. It just, it
Yeah.
felt like a prosthetic was put on his face just to elongate his jaw. He's already built, right? Like because of the
Yeah.
workouts he's been doing in the real world, Kumail's. But yeah, you're right. It had to be on purpose because of what they show
Is it a
later.
Hulu
Yeah, his
thing
lips
to
were
make him?
purple.
Yeah, yeah, to make him look bad, you think, or what?
To
Like
make
he looked like Dracula,
to make
like
Steve
gone
to show
wrong.
that like well, first of all, he has let's start over with the no media training whatsoever. So there's a contrast of media training and no media training. You could definitely see he had no media training. He didn't have, if he's one of the richest guys, he doesn't have like a proper makeup person, or maybe they're because he's one of the first brown people that
He's
they
so
don't know
cheap.
how to do makeup. Like how do I work the complexion?
I thought the commentary was like the regular, like, makeup people on the regular news channel that would do makeup for guests don't know how to do any brown person's makeup because they never have brown people on. I thought, like, maybe that was the
I
commentary.
think it's a little bit of both,
Man,
frankly. You have this because she's like, you're fine, you're fine. Clearly, he's not fine. He notices there's a problem with his makeup as well. And then you throw in his non-media training, which makes him even more nervous. While Nick is prancing around doing wonderfully on national TV, local TV couldn't do it. Which I think personally, I think that's fine that he was screwing up on local TV because at least it's not national news coverage in this day and age of internet coverage. Like it'll stay local within the LA market, even though that is his market and it is a big market,
Primary
but
market.
it's not
Yeah.
national.
and then
So
he comes in with the coffee, and he's like, "We also have coffee mugs and keychains and keys, because keys are required to enter, men's domiciles." So he's like going on about
Oh,
other
that's what he says in
merchandise.
the interview?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
he's like, "Coffee with mug and keychains and keys are required to enter the domicile. Why not pictures of men
Yeah.
and calendars that women want to see men naked?" Like he just keeps going. It's like he's just
Yeah.
repeating the obvious over and over and over. And I've never heard someone say domicile before in terms of a
Yeah.
house. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he literally used that word.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, I just think he's really cheap. Like, even though he has money and he can do things with it, it's his own fault he doesn't have media training. He could have hired someone to help him. He just thinks that he's this badass, he can do anything, and he doesn't need to spend his money on anything unless he wants to buy a printing press, then he'll do
oh,
that.
he's going.
I know. I
So,
already made this joke, but I imagine Steve with Guru Jagat and
yeah.
Yogi Bhajan. Like these three would have they would have ruled the world if they brought
Yeah.
all their shenanigans together.
Yeah.
Yeah, those guys could
White
bring in their
woman,
marketing because
and
this
then
guy
two
doesn't know how
Indian
to
overlords.
market.
Yeah, he does not a market. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
And I was arguing with you on 2 episodes ago that he does know how to market. And the calendar, I guess he ripped off Playgirl. So it wasn't his idea.
Yeah. He has some good ideas, but he doesn't realize his limitations. Like, you cannot be the poster child for this business. It doesn't work. Let Nick
Nobody
do
wants
that.
to hear him say put money in the panties.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
What you guys just said, like it just connected the dot for me where he was talking about how he wanted this opulence, like this private club experience, right? VIP. And he wanted that stature of people, and where they weren't letting him in because of his like whether his the way he looks, his accent. right? And he was telling Otis, there's a subset of people that don't want to see a black man in their calendar. They can't do it. And here he is speaking to the audience. I'm thinking, nobody's telling you right now that nobody wants to see a fobby Indian guy speaking the way he's speaking. Because the way the Samin was
Yeah.
making fun, I was like, you know what? That's the connecting the dot of he's speaking that way.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to see that on the screen. There's going to be a subset of an audience that's like, what the hell is this guy even saying? I don't want to hear this.
Yeah. I mean, it's not even
Yeah.
a Daisy Uncle. Like when there's a media junket for a movie, it's only the actors. It's the beautiful people. It's the people that
Yeah.
are that you can see. It's not
That's
like
true.
it's not Harvey Weinstein making the press tours back when he
Yeah,
was
that's
making
true.
movies.
Yeah.
Like he was too busy assaulting, right? So like, but he's not. It's not the producers like these guys gonna go and do the press junkets. So yeah, dude, Steve is uh, even without the Hulu episodes, it's so obvious if you read this guy's history that he was just like A, deranged, B, egotistical, and C, just all around terrible dude.
Yeah. So then
But
we
we are
see
good
Steve being driven
people.
around by
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Irene.
I know.
Good night, Irene.
So then we see Steve being driven around by Ray, who is telling him he did a great job for his first time. Ray's like a total yes man, total bullshitter. And Steve finally realizes this and he's like, stop talking. And then they keep driving and then he sees another club with a sign that says male stripping Mondays in front of this restaurant called the Electric Tomato. So he tells Ray to stop and they get out of the car and he says, everybody is trying to copy me and profit off of what I've built. And a white man comes out and says, can I help you? And then Steve says, is this your place? And the guy says, yeah. And then Steve tells him that Steve owns Chippendales. And the guy laughs at him and says he saw the guy that owns it on TV and it's not Steve, meaning that guy saw Nick. And Steve said, that guy is my employee. And then the white guy says sarcastically, oh yeah, that guy works for you.
Yeah.
And then he's like, look, pal, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but you need to get your sorry immigrant ass out of here. And then Steve says, immigrant? I'm an American and I am the owner of Chippendales. You got that? And the guy laughs and says, trust me, you don't want this fight. And I was just like, holy shit, there's so much wrong with this scene.
It's so fucked up. I mean, if this scene happened in real life, that's how it would have gone.
Yeah.
There's no way this guy was going to be like, also Nick's on TV as Mr. Chippendales. So of course you've seen him on TV, but the immigrant thing is like,
definitely a sign of the
that's
time.
happened to me. Like it's a sign of the time in the 90s, 80s,
Dude, my high school Spanish teacher, who was a white lady, told me to go back to where I came from.
Fuck you, lady, if you're listening.
What's her name?
Exactly.
Call her out.
I think she's dead because she used to eat like a whole entire bag of family size potato chips like every reading period when I was like 15. And so, I don't know.
All right.
And she was like, yeah. But anyways,
wait,
I told
time out. Your Spanish teacher told you, a 15-year-old child, to go back to where you come from.
Yeah.
What is the context? What happened? What made you
where did she come from?
What triggered her?
I don't know where she came from, but whatever. She said something racist to the whole class first, and then I responded telling her that's not right, and then she told me to go back to where I came from. Yeah.
You fucking suck, profe.
Yeah. So anyways.
Did you ever tell your parents?
Ooh.
No, I told my sister a long time later, like many months later.
If that happened to me, I would have, and my mom found out, my mom would have been at the school within an hour. And you'd be like, what the hell did you just do?
Yeah. This is something I've been like learning over my life is to like not take as much shit from people, but I was in full on shit taking mode as a teenager. So, I told my husband and he was like, you should have sued her. He was like hella pissed at me for not doing anything. I just kind of was like scared. So I told her at that point when she said that to me, I was like, you mean San Jose? Because I was born there. And then she,
is this 9/11? And then she just did,
era?
like 2000s, early like.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been right before or right after. I don't know.
Wow.
So, yeah, and then this
Did
other kids
you
in
go
my
back to where
class.
you came from?
No,
You went
well,
to
I actually
Fremont.
did live in an apartment, and after
Back
that,
to
I lived in an
to
apartment in
Fremont.
San Jose for a while. Yeah, when I got older, like 10 years after that. But yeah, other kids in my class were like, "Dude, what the hell?" It was pretty crazy. But yeah,
Back when Fremont was white.
it wasn't white back then either. But
True.
anyways, so then what happened? So then Steve gets back in the car with Ray, all dejected, and like he starts like swirling with thoughts of like paranoia and anger. You can tell they like cut all these clips in and whatever as he's like staring off into space. And so when Ray stops the car in front of the club, he tells Ray, "I'm gonna burn that place to the ground." And Ray says, "You shouldn't do that." And Steve says, "You're right. You're going to do it." And Ray's like, "What?" And then Steve turns to him and says, "Remember the time you betrayed me shooting Otis Calendar? You owe me." And then he says, "Steve, come on." And Steve interrupts, "Mr. Bannerjee." And Ray says, "Mr. Bannerjee, come on. I think you need to get home and kiss your wife." And Steve says, "You swore an oath of loyalty." And
Oh my
Ray
God.
says, "Yeah." And Steve says, "Then show me you mean it." And yeah. And then, like, in the next scene, we basically see Steve in his office at night looking over some papers, and he receives a call telling him to turn on the local news. And he does. And they're reporting a fire with an unknown cause at the Electric Tomato. And Steve watches the news as he pours himself a stiff drink, trying to take the edge off. And that's it. We're like full
Dr.
on insane now. Yeah.
Straight up.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. Like such a weird scene. Like to complete the villain arc, sitting behind his desk with his thick scotch, and then he gets a phone call from his minion. The job is done. Like it's so
Yeah.
ridiculous. And then it's scened out. I was like, okay, all right, Mr. Badman. The Electric Tomato is
Listen, you
got
don't want this
squeezed.
fight. And then he goes, "No, you don't want this fight, brother." And it's just,
I will burn
Yeah.
it to the ground.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Oh man, this is a wild ass series, man. I can't wait to watch the next 3. I want to see what Steve does, what he doesn't do, and ultimately, I'm not gonna say it. But let's all stay tuned.
It's getting
Yeah.
juicier and juicier.
I already know what happens, man.
Yeah.
Oh, it got so juicy. I forwarded.
Yeah,
And
me too.
I also rewinded a few scenes, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
All right. The tea bags. Got
Forward
it.
it. Reverse.
Well,
Catch you
on that
guys
note,
later.
I take my leave. Yoga Flame. Yoga Fire.
Jingle out.
Let's go jingle
Everybody's
out of
out.
here.
No
Happy New
yogas.
Year, everybody. Let's go.
Oh, this is gonna raw dog you.
Oh my God.